I'm well. And you?
I'm
Good?
good.
Yay. All right. Oh, it's good we're back. Nice.
Hi, Susie. Are you home for the summer, Audrey?
Yes, I am. I am. And you, Leah?
Yep, we're home.
Okay. Yeah. As summer is, as it is without knowing what it feels like at the moment, of course. But, we get this kind of weather at this time, don't we? Around December.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we
Yeah.
always do.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, Susie? Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm
How's
frozen.
it going? Yeah. How's it going, Dovid? How's it going for everyone, your family, everyone?
Yeah, we're doing well.
Mama,
Doing
yeah.
good.
Yeah, the kids.
Kids, yeah. My older Mushki went to, came back from camp.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was a big thing,
Oh, how did she respond to it, and what happened?
It was quite, came back quite excited. So
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. That is good. It's a good
Yeah.
experience. First time, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank goodness it was a good experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there'll be more then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess for tonight, the topic is something which is, quite personal for a lot of people. And what we're dealing with, and we're really trying to learn from Yosef, who had quite a difficult family, but at the same time, he was able to emotionally move on at a certain point. And not only that, but he actually ended up supporting the people who had earlier on tried to get rid of him, tried to kill him. And now at the end, as they get older, he ends up supporting them as well. So what we want to look at is, how do you do that? And we're especially going to note that it doesn't mention in the Torah that he forgave them, and it doesn't mention that they even asked for forgiveness. So it seems that there's some path, there's some way that we can move on and have a relationship, have some sort of level of relationship and helping each other, even when we don't see eye to eye, and even when there remains.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, because at the end, it was just false. It wasn't real. And what a relationship did they really have? Because at the end, when he died,
right?
When the father died, they were terrified.
Yes, that's true.
Do away with him. So this isn't a basis of a relationship or getting along or forgiveness.
Oh, you're right. It wasn't. We don't see full forgiveness. But I think that they didn't understand his perspective, and that's why they were scared. If they would have understood what's going on inside him, they actually had no reason to be scared. He was never going to do anything to them.
So why didn't he communicate that with them? So there's a problem here with communication with these boys.
Well, no, he had looked after them nicely. They were just worried that now that their father passed away, now he's going to get them.
But
right?
But why didn't he convey to them I don't know what I'm feeling towards you. I'm not going to do anything to you guys. Why couldn't he have shared that with them?
Well, that is a good question. He did share somewhat how he's feeling. The thing he as we'll see, he told them, one of the most powerful lines he told them is that you didn't do anything to me. Hashem did. But at the same time, he wasn't actually happy with them. He wasn't happy with them. He just felt that they didn't do anything to him. So that's what we're going to look at, really. And if they felt a bit of unease, it was because they never actually finished the story. There was never a sort of a full reapproachment. And that's actually part of the issue here. And that's what we're going to look at.
So is the injured party the one who's supposed to go humble pie and just say, hey, everything's all right?
No, actually, if they had wanted forgiveness, they should have asked for it. We do find that they felt regret, but they never said it to him. To each other, they said, oh, we really messed up. We shouldn't have done this. But in talking to him, we don't find that they say, we're so sorry. We find that they're embarrassed and so forth, but they never really apologize. And that really is part of the problem.
But he never knew any of this, that they felt bad, because they never communicated that with him either.
Right, exactly.
I'm just looking at family relationships in this whole thing.
And you know what? That's why the stories in the Torah are so relevant, because until today we're dealing with these same issues. You're right. So we find that they were in front of Yosef, where they said, we really messed up, we're guilty, we shouldn't have sold Yosef into slavery. But they were speaking in Hebrew, and this was before Yosef revealed himself to them. So they thought Yosef is an Egyptian viceroy who doesn't know Hebrew. They're speaking Hebrew, and they say, we're so sorry. Then he reveals himself to them, but they never actually say sorry to him.
Yeah.
You're right. And that was a problem. Hi, Naomi.
Hi.
Now I'm going to share a story. And, I have a bit of a different crowd sometimes between the Shiur and Shul. The truth is, it's been a while. It was before Corona. It was probably at least a year ago I shared this in Shul, so it's probably okay anyway. But I still remember it. I remember my drasha from a year ago. But either way, there was a young man in Israel. This happened only a few years ago. It was in the news in Israel a few years ago. His name is Nachman Stitzer. And he was working in a school. I think he was a teacher or a teacher's aide or something like that. And he had a little bit of an extra thing that he did besides teaching. There was some of the kids who lived a little further away from the school, and he lived in that area too. So he bought a van, and he used it to, he had a little car service, and he'd transport kids to school. That was his extra thing that he did. Now, something really terrible happens. One day, he gets to the school. It's a bit of a long drive. The kids all come out, so he thinks, and off he goes. He locks the door. They all go into school, and he goes into school. And at the end of the day, he comes back to the car, and they realize that he left behind one kid. And it's a hot day. It's a terrible situation. And this child dies. He's dead. They come back. It's really terrible. You could imagine the feelings. And he was arrested, and for manslaughter or whatever. And he goes to court. His face is ashen, and he's feeling absolutely terrible. Of course, the family of this boy who passed away, the boy whose name was Chaim Boimel, and the family asked that he be released to house arrest. Fine, he's released to house arrest, and they asked that he be allowed to come out to visit during Shiva. And he, of course, did not want, he'd rather die than visit during Shiva. He's feeling terrible, but he visits. And there's the grandfather's sitting there, and he's very emotional. But he tells him, listen, this Chaim was the love of my life. What a wonderful kid. What a wonderful boy. But I don't want someone else to, I don't want someone else to die or internally die because of him. And at the trial, the grandfather speaks, and he speaks in defense of this fellow, and says that, it's terrible, but it doesn't help us now if he's in prison. And due to that, in part, the judge actually gives this guy Nachman the verdict of just a community service. And what happens is that the grandfather, together with Nachman, found an organization to just put in the forefront. Everyone should remember, and they make, videos and the talks and whatever it is, all on the topic of making sure that you don't leave the kids in the car even for 1 minute while, and the danger of the overheating, etc. So it's quite a, you can, there's a video about it, you can watch it. It's quite powerful, but it also, it puts some of our sort of how we are hurt. I don't know, everyone has their own peckle, but everyone has their own, bag, as they say in Yiddish, but the own things that everyone has their own things that they're dealing with. But at the same time, this ability to forgive, I guess it was an accident, but still a very bad accident, but to move past this is something quite powerful, and something that we see to a degree with Yosef. As Susie pointed out, there's no apology, but we still see this idea, at least he tries to give his brothers a good life afterwards. Now we're going to link this in with Asara B'Tevet. Asara B'Tevet, the 10th of Tevet, it's the fast coming up this Friday. And it's mentioned in Tanakh, of course. It marks the anniversary of the date where Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, surrounds Jerusalem. He makes a siege around Jerusalem, and it's the beginning of the end. And let's read inside. This is from Yecheskel. Vayhi dvar Hashem elai, the word of Hashem was to me. In other words, he had a prophecy. Bashana Tishis, in the 9th year, B'chodesh Hasiri, it was the 10th month, which is Teves. Be'esel HaChodesh, the 10th day of the month, Lamar, saying, and this is what Hashem says. Hashem tells him, son of man, write for yourself the name of the day. This very day, the king of Babylon has besieged Jerusalem on this very day. So remember the date, the 10th of the 10th in the Jewish calendar. That's the day of the beginning of the siege. Now, this links to interpersonal relations and links to Ahavat Yisrael in two ways. Number one, we know that both Batei Mikdash, the destruction of both temples, related to a lack of Ahavat Yisrael. The first temple, very soon after King Shlomo, after King Solomon built the temple, in the times of his son Rechavam, there was a rebellion, and the Jewish people divided into two separate kingdoms, and there were many civil wars between them. Unfortunately, there were times of peace between the two kingdoms too, but there were many civil wars. It weakened both kingdoms, and therefore, one by one, the kingdoms were eaten up and destroyed. Because they were not united, it made it easier to destroy them. Now, the second temple we know as well was destroyed as a result of Sinat Chinam, as a result of baseless hatred. And therefore, Asar B'Teves, when the siege began, the beginning of the destruction, that relates to this whole issue, the cause of the destruction, which was due to a lack of unity and a lack of love between each other. There's a second link as well. What happens when you're in siege? You know what happens? You're all stuck together whether you like it or not, right? Normally, you're able to leave. When there's a siege, everyone is stuck within those same walls. So we're all stuck together. And therefore, the siege represents a message from Hashem. Hey, guys, Jewish people, I'm forcing you to be together. Behave that way. And this is your last chance of the destruction. So that's the second message. There's a famous statement of the Avud Raham. The Avud Raham, like his name sounds, the Avud Raham, it was a Spanish scholar. And he says that actually this is the only fast besides Yom Kippur where we fast even on Shabbos, right? when, let's say, Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av falls out on Shabbos, we push off the fast to Sunday. Same with Shiva Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, when the walls of Jerusalem were broken. If it falls out on Shabbos, we fast on Sunday. Tanit Esther, the fast of Esther, if it falls on Shabbos, we fast 2 days earlier on Thursday. But the only time we fast on Shabbos is Yom Kippur. The Avudraham says there's a second time as well, Asara B'Tevet, the fast, which is this Friday. The reason is because it uses the word Etzem Hayom Hazeh, the essence of this day, this very day. It only uses that word by one other fast, Yom Kippur. So it's saying that this fast, it hits us to our essence, the essence of that day, this very day, and which means we'd fast even if it was Shabbos. And in fact, with other fasts, they don't fall out on Friday, because when a fast falls out on Friday, it means that we come into Shabbos hungry, and therefore it's not a good thing. Only this fast falls out on Friday because of its severity. That's Avodah Ham in text 2. So it is so severe, as we said, because it's part of the reason it's the beginning of the end, but the end is due to a lack in Ahavat Yisrael. Let's go back to the story of Yosef and try to find some hints in how to deal with situations where it's not perfect, but still we're going to somehow have peace without having full peace. I just want to mention, especially since we're in the months after the passing of Rabbi Sachs, I'll just mention a thought from him which I like. The prophets spoke of an era of peace and love. The sages of the Talmud spoke not of shalom, but of darkei shalom, ways of peace, which means even if you don't feel peaceful, let's create a system of peace even when you don't feel it. So which is greater? Which is more powerful and more inspiring? Complete peace and brotherhood and everyone all together with love, affection, or darkei shalom, the ways of peace even when you don't feel it. So what would you answer, of course? What would you think? What's a deeper peace?
Darkei Shalom is more of a challenge.
Okay, good. So you're right. What Jonathan Sachs says is that what people would assume is that Shalom, the prophetic vision, that's a much higher level of peace. But what he argues, like what you're saying, David, is that Darkei Shalom in the Talmud is actually something greater. You know, you don't like the person, they've hurt you, they're difficult. Find a way to be peaceful, even when you don't see eye to eye. That's in a way a higher level, something that takes more strength than the vision of the prophets of complete peace. So now let's go back to Yosef. You know, Yosef has a few distinctions. One of them is he is the person who cries the most times in Tanakh. Okay? Yosef cries, I think it says, and he cried 7 times about Yosef, I think. I didn't list them all here, but I think it says the word cried about Yosef 7 times. But either way, I've got some of them here. So all of them, by the way, happen after he's in the process of coming back to his brothers. When he's thrown into the pit and there's snakes and scorpions, he doesn't cry. When he's sold into slavery, he doesn't cry. When he's thrown into prison in Egypt, he doesn't cry. But once his brothers come and they're buying wheat and he's about to reveal himself to them, that's when he starts to cry. And once he starts crying, he continues crying throughout his life as well. So here is one of them. In chapter 42, in Parashat Miketz, last week's parasha, each brother said to the other brothers, we are guilty. And by the way, like this is what I mentioned at the beginning. this is where they admit their guilt, although they don't say it to Yosef. They say, we are guilty, our achinu, for our brother, shera'inu tzaras nafshe, we saw the pain of his soul, bischanei eleinu, he was pleading to us. He was saying, please, I beg you, save me. And we didn't save him. And that's why we're having these problems now in Egypt. And then Yosef hears this, Vayasev me'aleim, he turns away from them so they wouldn't notice, Vayef, and he cries. Then another time we find him crying is when he meets Binyamin. He sees Binyamin, and let's read it. This is the next verse quoted, Perek Mem Gimel, chapter 43. It's the beginning of page 2. Vayisa Einav, he raises his eyes. Vayaris Binyamin Achiv, he sees Binyamin, his brother. And then they start talking. Vayomer, he says, Alikim Yechancha V'ni, Hashem should give you grace, my son. And Vayamar Yosef, then Yosef hurries, Kinichmer Rachmav, his mercy has been aroused, El Achiv, on his brother. Vayivakish Livkos, he wanted to cry. Vayaveh Chadara, he went into a private room. Vayev Sham, and he cries there. So Yosef meets Binyamin, they start talking. In the middle, Yosef's about to burst into tears. He quickly goes into the side room and he cries there. Later on, this is the third time I quoted, after Yaakov passes away, and the brothers are afraid this is Yosef's moment. Now he's going to take revenge on us. Just as Esav said, once my father passes away, I'm going to take revenge on Yaakov. That happens again now. At least the brothers are worried. Yosef is going to, now that our father has passed away, Yosef's going to take revenge on us. And therefore they make up a story. They say that our father asked, he instructed that you be nice to us, etc. And Yosef cries for the fact that they suspect him. Now, what is Yosef when he meets Binyamin? I understand that he would want to cry, but he doesn't cry straight away. He cries after they start talking. There was some sort of trigger. Now, I've had this where I've been in an emotional situation and then someone said something and suddenly it all hits me. I don't know if, I'm sure other people have this. Like, they're in a very emotional, something happens, they're just keeping calm, and then someone says something and then it sort of bamboozles your defenses. You've got yourself all ready to be calm no matter what, and then someone says something and suddenly it becomes a lot more difficult.
It triggers something, yes?
Huh?
It triggers something.
Yeah, there's some sort of trigger, someone, especially it's like something sort of that you weren't expecting. You were ready for one sort of reaction, and then what actually happens is a different reaction, and then you're suddenly, you've got yourself ready not to have any outbursts, not to have any major emotion, and then something else happens and it triggers exactly, and it's not you don't have your defenses ready for that happening. So this also occurs with Yosef. When he sees Binyamin, he knew he was going to see Binyamin and he's ready to stay calm. He's got himself ready to stay calm. But then, as Rashi tells us, I'll read it in English. This is text 4. For his mercy was stirred. So Rashi tells us exactly what happened. And by the way, this reminds me of my daughters. My older daughter was in camp. The next daughter, Tzipi, was making cards and signs and all different things for Mushki the whole time that she was in camp. So every day of the week, she made more things for Mushki, and we hung it up around the house and put it on her bed. She was all waiting for her to come back home. So it was quite sweet. And we find a similar thing with Yosef and Binyamin. Yosef and Binyamin are the only two brothers from the same mother. So they were full brothers. The rest of the brothers were half brothers with them. And let's read it inside. For his mercy was stirred. He, Yosef, asked Binyamin, have you a brother from your mother? Because he's pretending to be a a foreigner. He hasn't revealed himself as Yosef yet. So Binyamin replied, I have a brother, but I don't know where he is. Have you any sons? He replied, I have 10. He asked him, what are their names? He replied, Bela and Becher, etc. He asked, what are the significance of these names? He replied, all of them are connected to my brother and the troubles that befell him. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the idea is that all 10 children that Binyamin had were all named in some way after his brother. So he was like obsessed with his brother, and again and again and again he names from this angle and from that angle after his brother. I know someone who was named. He has one name. He's named after someone who has two names. So then when he had a son, he named his son the other name that was missing from his grandfather. Cute. So now there are two people named after the same grandfather, father and son. So Binyamin, he named his first son about how he misses Yosef, and then the second son, how he misses Yosef, the third and the fourth and the fifth. All 10 are named in connection to Yosef, and therefore Yosef hears that. Whoa! He feels such tremors. There's such love between them, and he can't control himself. He starts to cry. And where do we see this in the Psukim? Where do the Psukim hint that this was the conversation? So this is text 5. I'll say it outside as well. If you look in the discussion, what the Torah says, the Torah just says a few words. It says that Yosef said to Binyamin, Elokim yechancha b'ni, may Hashem be gracious to you, my son. Now, where else do we find this term being gracious? May Hashem be gracious. So we find it with Yaakov and Esav. When Esav asks Yaakov, so about his children, and he says that these are the children that Hashem has granted me. So we find this similar term. So therefore, that's how Rashi sort of sees between the lines that when we talk about grace, Hashem being graceful, it's talking about children. And Yosef cries because he has mercy. He feels this love. It says specifically El Achiv, to his brother. So in other words, there was they obviously spoke something to do with Binyamin's children that woke up Yosef's love and mercy. So that's how Rashi sees in the words of the pasuk that the discussion was about how all of Binyamin's children were named after Yosef, and how Binyamin missed Yosef. Okay. Either way, let's try to think about how did Yosef move on. First of all, there's a very interesting statement of Rabbi Bachya. We mentioned it before, and that is, it's text 6. He notes that no forgiveness is actually mentioned. Rabbi Bachya says, the Torah does not specify that he forgave them. If someone sins against someone else, even if he feels he regrets, he is not forgiven. The aggressor has a responsibility. Like Susie said earlier, it's the aggressor's responsibility to approach the one who was hurt and ask for forgiveness. Although Yosef comforts them, he speaks heart to heart, but we don't see there's no mention of forgiveness. He doesn't wipe away their sin. And therefore, the punishment still remains that it will be taken care of later. In other words, the 10 brothers did something wrong and they never actually got forgiveness, and therefore they still will be punished for this. And this Kabbalistically relates to Binyan Asar Harugi Malchus. There were 10 leading Torah scholars who were executed by the Romans, and they were linked to the 10 brothers and how the 10 brothers kidnapped Yosef and sold him, and now 10 descendants of these 10 brothers later died at the hand of the Romans, were executed at the hands of the Romans. And this, Rabbeinu Bachya says, is because there wasn't full forgiveness and there was no real apology. At the same time, although there wasn't forgiveness, Yosef managed to move on. He supported his brothers. He was able to act civilly, respectfully, look after them throughout. Now, there is a discussion, and I've spoken about it once before, actually last year, Vayigash. We looked into this in more depth, I think. The discussion is, what happens if someone is trying to do something wrong, but they're unsuccessful? Okay. Let's say, if we talk about talk about civil law, if someone who gets punished more, or do they get punished equally? If someone tries to hurt someone or actually hurt someone, if someone tries to kill, attempted murder or murder, are they considered the same? There was the same intention in both, but one of them had better aim. Does attempted murder get the same punishment as murder? What do you think? No, right?
No.
Attempted murder doesn't get the same punishment. I'll give you an even more wild example. A terrorist stabbed someone. This is a true story. It happened in Israel. Terrorist stabbed someone. He got rushed to hospital, and they discovered, while he's in hospital being treated, they discovered a tumor, and the injury actually saved his life. So now the terrorist goes to court, and he says, I should be acquitted, or at least given a light sentence, because I actually saved this person's life. Right? He tried to stab him. He was unsuccessful. He didn't kill him. And not only that, but now because of this stabbing, they took the one who was injured to hospital and discovered a tumor, and he was able to live for many happy, healthy years. So what happens now? Does the terrorist get a lighter sentence?
No,
No.
way.
No way.
We're
Okay.
talking
Why?
about
Agreed.
intent,
No way.
intent and motivation.
Huh?
Intent and motivation.
What do you mean? That
His
His
that
intent
was
is
not
to
his intention to save his life. He's motivated to kill him. He just missed, that's all. And as a byproduct, the man's tumor was discovered. Unless we argue that he had a sign from Hashem and knew what he was doing. But
well,
other than that, it would be motivation and intention. No?
well, this is actually, there is some level of debate about this.
Yeah.
And I'll give you some other examples. Let's say someone makes a promise. They promise not to eat a certain food. Then later on they eat it. They think they're breaking their promise, but actually they're not breaking their promise. Either because they eat the wrong food or because their promise was already annulled without their knowledge. Okay? So they promise not to have grape juice. They think that they're eating grape juice, but it's actually cranberry juice. Right? So have they done this sin of breaking their promise? So
I think there's a case in the Durham in Parashat Matos.
there is. That's right.
Yeah.
So the Torah says that if there's a woman who makes a promise and then she breaks the promise, she thinks that she did it, but really the promise was already annulled. So then she still needs atonement, right? That's right. So it's not necessarily the same sin, but still we see at the very least that it is a sin. On the other hand, for example, let's say, is it considered breaking Shabbos? Normally you're not allowed to go fishing on Shabbos. You're not allowed to trap an animal. You're not allowed to kill an animal on Shabbos. Let's say someone goes fishing. They throw the net into the water and they're trying to fish. But what happens is they don't realize, but there's actually someone who is drowning, and they save this child who's drowning. Right? Sorry, Danielle, you could stay in just close to. Sorry. So they save a child. They save the child's life. Great, amazing. The question is, did they break Shabbos? So they were trying to break Shabbos. They had every intention to break Shabbos. What ended up happening is they saved the child's life. They did a big mitzvah. Did they break Shabbos? So the Talmud does not consider it breaking Shabbos. Okay. Now, within this whole discussion, especially about vows, there's Rabbi Akiva commented on this, in what David mentioned from Parshas Matos, and this is in the middle of text 7. It's the final paragraph of text 7. I'll read it. When Rabbi Akiva came to this verse, he would cry, and he said, if with regard to one who intended to eat pork and kosher lamb came up in his hands, like the woman who intended to violate her vow, but in fact didn't, the Torah nevertheless says she requires atonement and forgiveness, or the more so one who intended to eat pork and pork came up in his hands requires atonement and forgiveness. So Rabbi Akiva says if even if you intend the wrong thing and you do the right thing, it's still wrong. Certainly when you intend the wrong thing and you do the wrong thing, that's for sure wrong. Now, why is it Rabbi Akiva specifically who gets so emotional? You know why? The Binyan Shlomo, he was a rabbi from Vilna about 200 years ago. He says a fascinating thing. You know how we said there are 10 sages who were executed by the Romans corresponding to the 10 brothers? How many brothers were actually present at Yosef's sale into slavery? 9. Because there's Yosef, of course, is not guilty. He's the one being sold. Binyamin is not there. Binyamin's the younger brother who loves Yosef. Reuven was also not present. So there's 9 brothers. So who is the 10th one? The 10th one, according to some commentaries, is Hashem. And now there are 10 later sages who get executed corresponding to the 10 who are involved in Yosef's sale. Rabbi Akiva then is the one who corresponds, so to speak, to Hashem. And Rabbi Akiva has some sort of intuition, some sort of premonition that his soul is linked back to the soul of the 10 brothers, the 10 tribes who sold Yosef. And he knew that at the end it turned out for the best for Yosef, but he's still worried about their bad intention. And that's why Rabbi Akiva specifically cries, not the other sages, because he knew that his sort of soul root links to the 10 tribes who had bad intention and a good outcome. And therefore he was worried, I'm going to be punished for their bad intention, even though the outcome was good. Now, let's come to the end and think about Yosef's perspective. So Yosef said something very powerful, and this is in text 9. He says to the brothers, and now you did not send me here, but Hashem, but God. And he made me father of Pharaoh and a lord of his household and rule over the entire Egypt. So Yosef says, actually, you didn't do anything to me. Who made me a slave? Hashem. It was all Hashem wanted me to be a slave. I still condemn your bad intentions. You wanted to do something wrong to me, but you didn't actually. The actual results, what happened was Hashem. And, there's a story where a kid complains to his teacher. He says, Mara, Esther wanted to hurt me. So the Mara says, well, how do you know that Esther wanted to hurt you? Well, because she did hurt me, right? So I know she wanted to hurt me. So why are you complaining that she wanted to hurt you? So the answer is that Yosef says the actual hurt, that comes from Hashem. The only thing I can blame on you, on that person, is their intention to hurt me, not the actual fact. The actual fact, Yosef said, was not from you, not from his brothers. That was from Hashem, number one. And anyway, it's for the good. We find King David say something quite similar. King David, unfortunately, was running away. His son rebelled against him, Avshalom, and he was running away. Avshalom's men were after David. They wanted to kill him. And on the way out, Shimi ben Gera, one of the sages at the time, he throws rocks at King David, at Dovid HaMelech and his entourage, and curses him out and says, "You deserve this, and I hope you drop dead." So what do you think David's militia say to this? Let's kill him. He's throwing rocks at us. He's cursing out the king. Get rid of this dog. And that's actually what the Avishai, one of David's generals, says, "Can I kill this dog who's throwing rocks at us and cursing out the king?" And David said, no. Hashem told him to curse. Hashem told him to, and therefore it's okay. Question is, where did Hashem ever tell Shimi to curse? We don't find anywhere in Tanakh that there's this prophecy and Hashem tells Shimi to curse out David. So there's different interpretations. But in Tanya it says that everything that a person does is in some way Hashem telling him to do it. We have free will, and therefore we are judged based on what we wanted to do. But what we actually did, that was what was meant to happen anyway. That was going to happen anyway. And therefore David says, don't punish him, because don't get angry at him. Okay, if he's guilty, then we'll deal with that later in courts. But right now, which in fact he does, he tells Shlomo to take care of Shimi years later. But right now, I'm not angry at him because this was what was meant to happen. Someone was meant to throw rocks at me and curse me out. That was what was going to happen anyway. Not only that, we're already coming to the end of coming to time. But what was it's not Shimi who's throwing rocks at me, it's Hashem. But with Yosef, we see that somehow at the end of the story, it turned out for the best. We don't always see that. But from Yosef, we learn to every situation that, Hashem wants good for us. We don't always see the whole story. Actually, our whole life is only a little bit of the story. And besides that, there's all other people and all other times. But ultimately, it's always that it is for a reason. We don't see it and we don't understand it. And anyone who claims to understand it is a charlatan. We don't understand it. But at the same time, it is good ultimately, somehow. And therefore, when someone does something, whatever it is to us, we might not feel it. But what do we know? We know that this is what Hashem wanted, number one. And number two, it's for the good. And therefore, I can live with him because all she did was wanted to do something to me, wanted to hurt me, but they didn't actually. Now, that's why Yosef, he never forgave them. They never asked for forgiveness. He never forgave them. But at the same time, he wasn't living his life angry at them because they actually hadn't done anything to him. They were insignificant players in that regard, and therefore he just treated them like a Rahmanas, like there's someone who he pitied and he had to look after, and he supported them when they were stuck. This is not easy, okay? This is really not easy. But with this type of attitude, if we have a firm belief that everything is from Hashem, and even when we're treated really wrongly, somehow this was meant to happen. So then it does make it easier. Okay, it's not going to solve it overnight because it takes a lot of meditation and reflection and really trying to assimilate this. It's very hard. But what it does take the edge off. And therefore, at least very quickly afterwards, if not at the moment, but at least very quickly afterwards, we can sort of get back to equilibrium by realizing that this was meant to happen. Now, do I want to be their best friend? No, because I see their character, that they're people who would want to hurt me. But did they do anything to me on the other hand? Not really. Now, this is not something, I'm preaching at a high level. It's something that I haven't reached, but it's something I do try to live by. And what should I say? Yosef's message is inspiring. And it's sort of like Jonathan Sachs's sort of Darkei Shalom level, where even if we haven't achieved full peace, at the very least, we can live with the ways of peace. Just being respectful and not having a grudge because ultimately they didn't do anything.
But did they ever sit and have Yontif dinner together?
Yes, they
They
certainly
did.
did. All the years that Yaakov was alive, they regularly came together. So Yaakov lived another 17 years.
Okay, and then afterwards?
Afterwards, they drifted apart more, but there was never a fight. But although it says that part of the reason why they after when the parent passes away, we have mourning, we avelot, mourning,
Yeah.
and therefore Yosef wasn't in the mood of big meals anyway afterwards. So it wasn't that Yosef found better company; it's that he wasn't in the mood of big meals anymore afterwards.
I
But after,
don't know if they were socializing. It was just like, we've got to go do this.
Well,
but after the Avelot for Yaakov, they
Yeah.
send him this message that's
Yeah.
totally false.
Yeah.
That because they fear that he's going to get out, he still wants revenge against them.
Right.
That sounds like a relationship that's perilously flawed.
Well, yeah, like it's true. Like we said, Yosef, we don't see Yosef forgiving them, so they may have sensed that. But besides that, they didn't realize fully what Yosef's perspective. They thought, sometimes someone's angry and they're in a fight and they think the other person's in the fight as well. And I've seen this. I've seen with one side, there's two sides. One side is fuming angry at the other one. And the other side's like, whatever. Okay, I have some things that I'm upset at him for that he shouldn't have done, but I've moved past that. I've seen it quite a few times. One side is in a big fight. The other side is whatever. I'm way past that now. So yeah, I think that the brothers also didn't realize where Yosef was. Although yes, he did. There was some. They weren't close, perhaps even afterwards.
Oh, absolutely, they don't realize where he was. I mean, I think that your text 9 says it quite well, that Yosef forgives them by very clearly. He doesn't hold anything against them. He says, "You're not responsible. God
Right.
wanted me to be here. I don't hold you responsible."
Yeah.
And I think he wants to make it up to the brothers, but they never are able to accept that. And that's his final weeping. Is the 7th of the 7 weepings is when they bring him the message, send him the message that says, before he died, our father said that to make sure you don't harm us. Because he realizes at that point that they're never actually going to accept that he didn't ever have any intentions against them.
Right.
Don't
Yeah.
you, do you know if there are any specific references in Kabbalah to the concept of forgiveness?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. One famous the idea of forgiveness means that you're reaching beyond the rules. So the idea of forgiveness implies connecting to Hashem
Yes.
at a strata beyond the regular. Right?
Yes.
It's considered a sort of a beyond the regular flow of energy, beyond the regular revelation, all that in Kabbalah would be called like Sovev energy, not Mamali energy. I
Okay,
don't like
yeah.
the all encompassing as opposed to the surrounding energy as opposed to the filling energy. There's other ideas too. There's the idea that the word for forgiveness is the same word for circle, and there's different interpretations for why they are connected. So yes.
It's just thinking about the concept of oneness and the concept of what is in others is within ourselves and vice versa,
Mhm.
and how that was dealt with, Kabbalistically.
Yeah. In the story at the beginning, the grandfather, when he asked for an easy sentence for the driver who let his grandson die, he said that it's like if one hand burns the other hand, then you're not going to cut off now the other hand. It's all one body. So
Yes. Thank you. By the way, if anyone, I don't know, it's a marvelous book. The last book that Rabbi Lord Sachs wrote is called Morality, and it's published about 3 months ago. It's a very fine book. I don't know if anyone else has read it, but it's a lovely book. Just published maybe a few months ago, and it's called Morality, the last book he wrote.
right.
And
I haven't read it. I'm not sure anyone else.
the even better news is that apparently that wasn't the last book he wrote. He wrote 2 further books. that haven't
Since he passed away, I read that he had written other material, but this is the last published book, is what I
Correct.
understand. And this is what I was just wondering. Dove, have you read it? Did you
I
say?
haven't read it yet. I'd like to read it.
Okay. I just recommend it. I'm a great fan of his also, but in any event, I just recommend the book if anyone's interested in that.
Yeah.
Have you read the whole book, Audrey?
I have, Leah. Yeah.
Oh,
Well
okay.
worth it. Well worth it. It's
All right.
not something you
have it?
breeze through. Yeah, I have it. And then they ran out of it, but I did get it, and I think it's back in stock.
Hmm.
It's a big book, and it's not a fast read, but it's
Right.
well worth it in my opinion. Yeah.
Nice.
I haven't read it, but I'm told it deals with contemporary events.
It does. He really is he's really he was a genuinely worldly, highly spiritual soul, and it's very contemporary, very current, and he's very well researched. So he digs back into history for lots of what he brings forward for today.
Nice. Anyway,
Thanks for that.
Sure. Thank you for
Mhm.
a lovely evening here.
You're welcome.
back.
Welcome. All the best. Good night, everyone. Thanks for
Thank you.
your.
Thank you.
Nice new glasses. I like the glasses. You?
Lots to think
Dove,
about.
Dove, you make new
Okay.
glasses?
Good night and thank you. Good night.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It was great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
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 David, sorry.
No worries.
They knew though?
Thanks.